Those- Let's see. Oh, he's gonna go the other. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the Finance and Governance Committee for February 28, 2023. And Madam Clerk, roll call and posting of the agenda.
Member Basua.
Here.
Member Tehran.
Here.
Chair Zaragoza.
Here.
The agenda for this meeting was posted on the City Hall Bulletin Board on February 21st, 2023.
Thank you. Please join me to salute our flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Our next item is item B, public comments out of the agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers either here or virtually?
Mayor Zaragoza, we do not have any speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Thank you. Our next item is item C. This item C1 is the approval of the minutes, that the Finance and Governance Committee approve the minutes of February 14, 2013, regular meeting as presented. Council members, any concerns on this item?
Mayor Zaragoza, we also do not have any speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Thank you. So,
I'll move to accept the meeting minutes as presented.
okay, approval by Councilman Tehran, second by Basua. Please vote.
Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you. Our next item is D1, reports, City Manager Department, risk to the ERP project related to Aaron Starr lawsuit preventing the city from obtaining City Council approved bonds, and the Fifth Amendment of the project management contract and the annual report of the ARP. Recommendation that consider the approval of up to $2.5 million from fiscal year 2022-23 general fund to cash fund the portion of the fiscal year 2022 enterprise resource planning ERP project expenditures in excess of the initial bond proceeds received prior to fiscal year, with addition of 22-23 general fund as listed in the budget cash fund for fiscal year 23-24 ERP project expenditures if litigation remains pending that prevents the city from issuing bonds, and two, and approve and authorize the mayor to execute the Fifth Amendment to the professional service agreement to Creative Core Technology Corporation, 9431-21FN, in the amount of $2,120,000 for the new not-to-exceed contract in the amount of $4,720,000, and to extend the term from December 31, 23 to December 31, 2024 for project management services related to the Human Capital Management, HCM, Intergov, Enterprise Asset Management, EAM, and utility billing phases of the city multi-year enterprise resource planning ERP implementation. And three, receive and file the ERP system annual report. And of course, this is under, there was a link, Measure M, there's a pre-recorded presentation as per Measure M. And we have, Ms. Klima, if we do have any questions, council members on this item. And go ahead, and I do have some questions.
Mayor, we have the Assistant CFO, Mark Sewell, here for questions, as well as the consultant from Creative Core, who's in the audience.
Okay. We'll start off. Let me go ahead and share a couple of questions that let me see if we can turn this around. I have some really concerns in looking at slide 5, of the presentation. I want to know what the consequences or maybe ramifications to our residents by stopping the city from obtaining bonds, for for projects here in the city of Ventura. And maybe there's some pros and cons that were placed on that. So I'd like to really find out what the consequences are, ramifications if we do not pass that, because I think bonds to me are a debt security for IOUs that the city can probably put against our city assets. And I've always said in the past too, to me, this is like the city or any resident trying to get a mortgage on a piece of property, and they have to go to a lender to secure some funding. So I just want to know what the consequences are if we don't not continue with the bonding ramifications.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. The consequences are pretty important for the city in terms of how it can operate going forward. This item tonight is focused primarily on the ERP, and I know that we'll be coming back to you with a broader report in terms of the impact more citywide on the impact of this litigation, because it is far more significant than just the ERP. The ERP was intended to be funded from the debt issuance that also included streets. That's why it's referenced in this particular item. And so, the impact before you on the ERP front is, what do we do now that we do not have any existing bond proceeds to continue the project, and therefore there's the recommendation to continue the project using general fund.
So the portion of the ERP is about $9 million and also 36 million for street improvements, correct?
That is correct. That was the issuance that was approved by council in October 2022.
On October
and was the
2022.
subject of the litigation in December 2022.
So potentially, even though we're talking about ERP and also streets, it potentially could impact other projects
That is correct.
that are really going to be, that are significant projects that will affect the entire, our residents,
That is correct.
which I think is important. And of course, there's some pros and cons here on slide 6, that probably talk about if we delay, the ERP, what the pros are and the cons are. So maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Sure, absolutely.
That's on slide 6.
Yes, thank you. So of course, the project is, I think, in year 3 of its full kind of implementation process. And the city, we've delivered already 3 significant phases: the timekeeping, executime, the Blue Beam online planning, and then core financials, which was launched in October 22. So this is a project which had a definitive start a few years ago and a finish which is still many years into the future. And so pausing or stopping the project right now would potentially risk a lot of the progress that has been made being lost. There's a lot of work that goes into analyzing how you want to utilize a piece of software. You don't just buy it from the shelf and plug it in and use it. You have to configure this, and a lot of thought process goes into that. And that progress needs to be consistent, and you need to have resources working on it consistently for you to be able to make significant progress. And so one of the significant risks of pausing a project like that would be you could end up wasting most of that time, money, and effort should you come back to it at a time in the future. And so, we recognize that is an option, but it would be one that would come with a significant cost, because you'd have to kind of start again almost on those phases that you have not yet delivered. I think that's the key message.
Yeah, and slide 3 talks about the bringing all the functions together so they can all speak together: the financial management, the HR, the asset maintenance, and utility billings. And that right now we're separated, or we're trying to get them all together so they can speak to each other.
That is correct. I mean, we're building a jigsaw puzzle, and if I can use that metaphor.
Now we put it together.
We've got the edges and we've got the corners, and we've got a bit of a, the picture's starting to be seen. And so by no means is it completed, and there are some fundamental and core pieces still to come. And, one would hope we can get the opportunity to complete that jigsaw puzzle for the benefits of, for everyone.
Thank you, council members.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Trump, Councilman Trump.
So I appreciate the responses to Mayor's questions, and I'm hoping maybe we can dive a little bit more into our ERP system, just so that folks who haven't been following along know exactly what it is and how far-reaching it is, and those who have been following along can get a refresher on where we've been and where we are. So my first question is, can you explain just briefly our ERP system? Like, what is it replacing? What did we have in place prior to this investment in the current system?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the ERP is very, very much an all-encompassing number of systems that all have the opportunity to speak the same language, as it were, and kind of work in congruent ways, and replaces a number of sort of disparate and old-fashioned systems. So Naviline is our current kind of financial system. But what the ERP has the opportunity to do is to streamline a lot of the same functions into one system and enable faster reporting, more transparency, clearer analysis, reduces redundant subsystems and opportunities for duplication or errors as you have a lot of keying and entry and things like that. And so it's a far more robust system. And so the project cannot be taken on all in one go. You can't just say we're going to turn everything off and turn on a brand new system. So that's why it's deliberately phased. And core financials basically becomes the foundation and bedrock of most of these systems, because most things end up with a dollar sign against them, right? And so with that delivered now, the focus has moved towards the payroll module, so that therefore we can bring the payroll calculations into the same system that ultimately reports our financial reports. Payroll is 60 to 70% of all of the costs in this city. So of course there's a significant financial impact to that. And then what you're also able to layer over that then is some more of the kind of community-facing functions and features of things like Energov, where we hope that that will improve business licensing processes and community development permitting and provide more transparency and clarity over that. And again, interfacing with the financial transactions means that it will just be, faster for us to be on top of all of the implications of that. And then, of course, asset management. So it is really very much all-encompassing.
Thank you for that. And I really hope that the public can understand and appreciate that prior to this, for example, timesheets were paper and pen, writing physically by hand, which meant somebody had to key that in, a human being put that into an outdated, archaic system, and then that system did what it did. And when we look at the need for efficiency and modernization of systems that are the backbone of our city, I think that's just one example. As you mentioned, Mr. Sewell, there's many, many, many departments and places where this system would touch that would streamline those systems within the city of Oxnard. And I hope folks can also appreciate, I remember this originally coming, I think in maybe 2018, 2019, way before I was on council. And I remember reading the staff report and looking at the information and seeing a screenshot of the system that was in use, which is a black screen with green text. And if folks can remember back to the library used to have a system like that in the 90s to search for books. And if the DMV previously had that, but think back to 20, 25, 30 years ago, the black screen with the green text on a monochrome monitor, that's essentially what we were still using, that type of technology, that era of technology. And this is now modernizing it and bringing us into something that's much more efficient and able to use modern systems and communicate with each other. And what you mentioned too about permitting, there's so many examples we can use, but looking at our permitting process through community development, that is a system that is self-admittedly by the city needing work to be further streamlined and be able to work out its efficiencies. But to disrupt the system that would have created that efficiency is almost going against what folks are saying needs to happen. And it just seems very odd to me, that contradiction in actions that folks are taking here. So my next question here is, we had some options tonight regarding moving forward with the next steps for ERP. One of them is just waiting out the litigation. But on one side of that, is there potential that the cost of this system and the next phases will increase if we were to put it off for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years?
Yeah, good question. Inflation, of course, is around everywhere. So I would be foolish to stand here and say, no, I think there's going to be no impact to that over that sort of time frame. What I can say for certain is the contract we have with our software vendor is agnostic to any decision we make to delay or to continue with this. We are on the hook for an annual service fee for these systems, which is not insignificant. It's almost $1 million a year for the systems that we are implementing. And so we're paying that whether we continue at the pace we are right now or if we were to delay. And so, that would just be lost and ultimately wasted. So yeah, there would be that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there would be a significant ramp up again. If we were to delay, you'd have to build up that learning curve. You'd have to try to, regroup your resources and make sure that they're available. So it would not be insignificant to this city in terms of its financial impact.
So you said regardless if we have it or not, we continue paying them?
The contract we have with our software vendor assumes that we're
That's
going to have an
extremely
annual
important.
maintenance.
Thank you I'm sorry for interrupting.
No,
but
not a problem.
That's a underlying point,
Yes, yes. Thank you for that response, Mr. Sewell. And my last question here, and either I'd imagine you would take it or Ms. Klima or Mr. Fisher. I'm hoping that folks can just take a moment to explain the mechanics of this lawsuit. Just why was it filed and what does freezing our bonding abilities actually mean to something like the ERP system?
So the lawsuit was filed after the October approval of last year by the council to issue the bonds for, there was the street side of it, and then there was the ERP side of it. So what it alleges is that instead of the council approval, voter approval was required. That's one aspect of it. The second aspect is that the city didn't follow procedures under the Joint Exercise of Powers Act. And thirdly, the lawsuit alleges that the lease revenue bonds violate or would violate a long-established rule for bond financing of projects. So it's kind of attacking the financing mechanism on three fronts, and the city disagrees with each of those allegations. However, litigation taking the course it has to go through will take, we expect, upwards of 2 years to resolve. The first step is to get through the trial court level, and then, assuming the city prevails, we expect an appeal to be filed, and that would take longer given the appellate process of briefing schedules and reply briefs and getting an argument scheduled. So that will take some time to resolve completely. And until that litigation is resolved, then not just for these bonds, but for other bonds that the city might consider, other financing mechanisms, just having this cloud of litigation challenging the assumptions that are made for how these big projects are financed would, that cloud would overshadow other attempts, similar attempts for financing different projects.
And I guess that would be like the streets, aquatic center, fire station rebuilds or roofing replacements, major capital projects, correct?
Correct. So particularly for the lease revenue bond paradigm, I guess, that all those assumptions are being challenged in one case. So that would presumably have this cloud over other attempts for that same mechanism for different projects.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Those are my questions. Thank you all.
And just to follow up, I think the public needs to understand that that lawsuit really puts all the city operations, as is mentioned here, that including capital improvement and infrastructure projects, in jeopardy for many, many years. And really, how can we run a business, because a corporation, without having the funding to improve our capital items and infrastructure projects, which I think are extremely important to all of us. Councilor Sewell?
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. You know, it's a real shame that this item is here before us. The ERP is the foundation of what our city does and maintains every aspect of what staff has the ability to do. And it's something that has been started, and the fact that we're here listening to an item because Mr. Starr decided to sue the city once again, it's just, it's just so bad, but it's even worse for our residents that we serve, because they're the ones that are going to be impacted the most. Not to mention that the ERP system has been already rolled out. It's already in the process. Staff has already done all this work. And if anybody has ever rolled out an ARP system, oh my God, and to have it stopped in the middle is just not the right thing to do. So totally disappointed with this item coming before us, but I get it. It's here. We've got to move on. I'm going to move the recommended action and move that this go to council in order to allocate the funds to finish this project.
Excuse me, Mayor. We have no speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Thank you. Is that for only one item here, the ERP? Okay.
I will second the motion by Councilwoman Basua. Just a quick kind of discussion on that. Is it accurate to say that looking at the recommended amount that we would do to cash fund this next phase of the ERP process, how would we be funding that? Where is that cash funding coming from?
And that was a question I had already.
Yeah, so the recommendation before you is to use general fund reserves. We've estimated that to be about $2.5 million this fiscal year. Clearly, depending on the unknown, how long this thing can take, we may be coming back with some recommendations to use some fiscal year 24 general fund, with the hope that if the city is successful, that could be reimbursed. Nothing comes without no risk, but we are recommending that we continue the project on that basis.
Okay, thank you for that. And I just hope that folks understand that we would be taking $2.5 million from this fiscal year that could have and should have been used elsewhere for general funded programming or efforts from our recreation, cultural community services, from our public safety, from our parks, things that we have dedicated ourselves to restoring after the voters overwhelmingly approved Measure E, and now we are having to utilize it for something that was already in process of being funded via a bond. And so I hope folks understand that. And in my head, it sounds like you have your car payment and all of a sudden the financer says, no, we're going to need you to do the next year of payments right now up front. And I don't care how you pay for it, but all the other things you use to pay out of your household budget, no, that's coming to us instead. And that's unfortunate that that plan is now essentially sabotaged. So,
Thank you. That's an excellent analogy. Okay, let's go ahead. First and a second. First by Councilmember Basua, second by Councilmember Truan. And this is on the ERP. Please vote.
Motion carries 3-0.
Our next item we had was the creative core technologies. We need to IT support.
That's all one item.
All one item?
Mayor, that's the same
The
item.
whole works? Okay, good.
So
Okay.
just to get clarity from the maker of the motion, that was your motion for
That is-
the
that
three
is correct.
recommendations
The three,
under item D1.
Correct.
Okay, my apologies, thank you. All righty. So, go ahead. Our next item, let me see, what do we have there? Item number 2. Future agenda, excuse me. Okay. Any items?
I just wanted you to officially say it, Mayor, that we moved on to that agenda item. Yes.
Okay.
I do have a request for a future agenda item. Again, thank you to our finance folks for this item tonight. It was specific to ERP. But for this committee, I'm hoping that maybe we could come back with a broader discussion on the implications of this lawsuit and how it can potentially affect all of these other currently bonded items or future bonded items, and have a much broader discussion to know how this can affect the residents of Oxnard directly. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
I'm good.
I'm good. I'm good too, so we are adjourned. And it's gonna rain.